In this video, I'm going to be covering how I record, mix and master my covers and original music for YouTube. I can only apologise to the people that have been asking for this video for about 18 months and I keep telling them it's coming out soon or in a few weeks. I left it for a while when I was moving house because I wanted to wait until I was in my proper studio so that I could make a better video about it. And then since I've been here, I've just been busy actually making music and recording stuff, so I never got around to it. But today is the day. I'm going to be screen capturing on my Mac in Logic, and I'm going to show you how I set up the microphones, how I record everything into Logic with my audio interface and everything, and then going a little bit through the project in Logic and talking about how I mix and master everything. I think it's worth saying out the gate that I don't have any professional training in music or like mixing and mastering or anything, so this certainly isn't gospel. Don't take my word for it in terms of this being the best way to do things. This is just how I've learned to do it from watching loads of YouTube videos about the process, lots of trial and error, and just kind of working out what sounds good. So let's get into it. So this is the Logic session for the Acquiesce cover that I did by Oasis a while ago. I thought this would be a good one to show because it's a good example of the different rhythm guitar parts that I record. It's got some fun drum fills and things going on. The first thing I do whenever I record any of these videos, especially if it's a cover, is I will Google the BPM of the original song and then put it into Logic. And then from there, I'll sit down on the sofa, which is behind me, and essentially record a guide track on the acoustic guitar and vocals at the same time. None of that recording will actually make it into the final mix. It's more just so I can work out the arrangement and put it into the tabs up here in Logic so I can see what parts of the song are coming up when I'm recording each part. And I prefer playing along to actual music tracks rather than a click track. So once that's recorded, I will turn off the click track and record everything else a bit more live, which feels better to me. Once that's done, I just start building everything up track by track. Usually, because I've got the mic and everything set up for the acoustic already, I will re-record the acoustic guitar without the vocals so that there's nothing bleeding into the mic. I don't always record it in exactly the same way or mix it the same way, just kind of depends on the song, but in this case there's two acoustic tracks. There's an acoustic DI track which is just coming straight out of the output of my guitar. I recorded this on my Gibson SJ200. That goes straight into the front of the interface, just into one of the preamps. Just for your reference, that sounds like this. And then I will also at the same time record using the microphone. So I put this somewhere around the 12th fret. This was recorded on my Neumann TLM 103, which is this microphone here, if I can actually get it off the stand. I record most of my vocals and acoustic guitar stuff with this microphone, just because it's the nicest microphone that I own. And I didn't do it for this track because there aren't any backing vocals, but if I'm recording backing vocals, I'll usually record them on a different microphone. I've got an AKG dynamic microphone that I use for when I'm playing live, so sometimes I use that to record backing vocals just to give it a slightly different flavour, so they separate themselves from the main vocals slightly. So this is what the acoustic mic sounds like. It's a bit brighter and it's a bit more roomy. And then I will combine the two of these, and you can see they're panned slightly left and right just to give it a little bit more width and separation. So this is what they sound like together. If I open up the mixer, both of these are sent to a bus, which is this acoustic guitar bus here. And then I just got a couple of really simple plugins on here. The first one is the Waves Audio G channel, or whatever it's called, SSLG. And I'm just using this to do a little bit of EQ. There's a bit of a low cut and a high cut just to take out the really boomy bass and any of the really rattly highs of the strings. And then the second plugin is just a CLA2A compressor, just doing a little bit of light compression. So you can see there it's doing about 5 decibels of gain reduction. It's also worth noting that when I record on the Neumann microphone on the acoustic guitar, that's going into an analog preamp on my desk here, and then a compressor as well, which is also an LA2A replication. So that mic channel actually has some analog compression baked in before it even gets to the computer. After that, I usually add some drums. The reason I do the drums next is because I like to record the electric guitars with most of the stuff already laid out. Gives it a bit more energy, it makes me play a bit harder so I get into the song more. For the drums, this is all just MIDI drums in Logic. I play them on my keyboard, which is down here. That sounds a bit like this. Usually I'll just play a small section and then loop it, and then I'll go in and separately record the drum fills and then the separate sections, so like for the chorus when it starts going on to the ride cymbal or something. For the actual kit, I'm using one of the producer kits. It basically sets it up when you're mixing like an actual mic'd up drum kit. So you can see down here, I've only got one MIDI track, which is the drums here, with all of the drums playing at the same time. But if I press this little arrow, it opens up all of these extra tracks. So we've got some mics for overheads, the kick in and out, snare top, snare bottom, hi-hat, tom, high, mid and low, and then a room sound, a bit of leak from the microphones, and then a punch track, which is something that I created. This is a trick that I learned from watching a YouTube channel called The Band Guide, and I highly recommend watching it because he's got some brilliant videos about making Logic drum sounds sound real. I think the guy's name is Colin. So a lot of these tricks that I've set up on the drums are stuff that I learned from watching his videos. There's a bit of compression and stuff on the main drum track just to give it a bit more life and make it sound a bit more roomy. And then these extra tracks here at the end called Punch and Grit are extra tracks. So there's a bit of parallel compression going on here where I'm compressing the drums really hard. So I've got a ratio of 13:1. If I isolate the drums, they sound like this. So the parallel compression is just giving the drums a bit more body, and there's also a grit track, which sounds like this. This has got a distortion plugin on it, and basically I'm just driving this quite hard so that it makes the snare hits and stuff sound a bit more harsh. If I turn off this stuff that I've done to make it sound a bit cooler, you'll see the difference. So this is the drums on their own. You can tell it sounds pretty weak. Then if I turn everything back on, you can hear that makes it a lot louder, but it also just gives the drums a lot more energy, which is really cool. And with all of those things combined, it actually sounds a bit more like you recorded a real drum kit rather than just pressing some notes on a keyboard. So that's the tricks with the drums. Then next I normally record the bass. I always find bass a bit difficult to mix, and until recently I still was like really not liking how the bass sounded in my mixing. And not that I think plugins are the solution to everything. However, I quite recently purchased the Chris Lord Algae CLA bass plugin from Waves. And this plugin, it's really great. I don't even know if it's emulating a specific amp, but it's basically something you can put on DI bass tracks and it just gives it a lot of great tone. So if I turn this off, this is what the bass sounds like on its own. And then if I turn the plugin on, pretty big improvement, right? I kind of maxed out a lot of the sliders on this. There's lots of distortion, so I'm pushing in lots of extra drive. I've turned the sub pretty much all the way up, which gives it a lot more sort of low-end energy. I've got a bit of compression going on here. Turned the treble right down because I could hear the pick attack a little bit too much, so I took some of that out. And then again, pushed some of the lower mids up as well. This is what it sounds like. Pretty cool bass tone, and that's just with one plugin. Before that, I've got a little bit of a channel EQ, just taking out the really low end so that by the time it's hitting the compressor, it's not got the really boomy bass energy at the bottom. And then just after that, there's a CLA 76, which is another one of the Waves compressor plugins. And I'm just doing a little bit of compression on here as well, just to tame it a little bit after it comes out the bass plugin. So that's what the bass sounds like. And then we move on to the fun stuff, electric guitars. So there's 4 electric guitar tracks here. I've got the intro guitar, which is just the first bit that's got the string bending on the bar chords. Then there's a main left and right rhythm guitar, and then there's the lead guitar here. It's not actually really lead guitar because there's no solos in this. The opening intro and the left guitar track were recorded using my Gibson ES335, and then the right track and the lead guitar were recorded on my Les Paul. Amps-wise, it's all recorded going through my pedal board, which is down here. It's pretty much all just the raw amp tone. There's no overdrive pedals or anything on for this. I did use a boost pedal for the lead guitar just to push the front of the amp a little bit more. I say amp, it's a pedal, but you know what I'm talking about. All of the guitars are going through the Universal Audio Ruby, which is a Vox AC30 style pedal from Universal Audio. Sounds great. It's one of the most organic sounding amp sims that I've heard, and I really like playing it. So I'm using that. I'm turning the volume up pretty high, which is pushing the amp and getting a lot of drive sounds out of it. So this is what the left guitar sounds like. It's pretty driven, as you can hear. There's quite a lot of high end, so it's quite a scratchy sound. Oasis were quite well known for having like a really mad, hissy sound, especially a lot in their earlier albums. Normally I would cut a little bit more in the EQ, but that's kind of what the actual track sounds like. So when I compared them, I was kind of mixing it to sound similar. When I'm recording this, and you can probably see in the video if you watch it, on the Les Paul I'm playing the riff which goes through the verse, which is the do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Great impression. And then on the 335 I'm just playing the bar chord, so they're actually quite different guitar parts, as you can hear. They're panned full left and full right, so you get them on either side of the stereo image, which sounds really nice. And then the lead guitar, which comes in the chorus, is basically just another guitar part to thicken it up a little bit. So on that bit, I'm just playing individual notes rather than chords. Noel does that quite a lot in the studio when he's layering stuff up, so especially going into the bridges. He quite often plays like a descending bass line on the E string of the guitar. It sounds really nice. It's quite low down in the mix, but it just makes you hear the chord changes a bit more because the individual notes ring out. So that's how all the guitars were recorded. And then if I look at EQs and stuff, pretty straightforward. Again, on the guitars, I've got a channel EQ that's taking out some of the low end. Then there's some compression on each of these. So again, I'm using the LA76. And then the main rhythm guitars are going to a guitar bus, which is this rhythm guitar bus here. Then I'm using the SSLG, and again, doing a bit of EQ stuff in here. It's got a bit of a bump around 1.5K, then a bit of presence just before 8K, and a bit of a boost in the low end as well. And then I'm using a Waves F6 RTA, which is like a real-time EQ analyzer. And what I'm doing here is I've sidechained the vocals. So when I'm singing, it's actually doing a slight EQ cut here, as you can see. So I play it. Basically, where I've boosted the vocals in the EQ, I'm using the vocal to then duck down both of the rhythm guitar tracks just by a few decibels. And you can set that with the compressor threshold here. So that line that you're seeing there that's ducking down is when it's actually kicking in. Quite often I will send the rhythm guitar tracks to a slight reverb as well. In this case I didn't, because I recorded with quite a lot of reverb coming from my guitar pedal board. One thing I forgot to say about the drums actually is that once they're all looped like this, you can see the sections where the loop just starts again. Once I'm happy with it and it's all locked in, what I do is I select all of the regions and press J, which turns it into one big one. Then I'll go in and select all of the notes and come down to functions, MIDI transform, and I do a humanize on this. Basically you can set the parameters for this, but it adds some slight variation to the velocity of each note, so it's not always hitting the drums with exactly the same level. And it will also offset the timing slightly, which is cool, so it stops it from being perfectly in sync with the metronome each time. And then the last thing really is the vocals. So this is what the vocals sound like on their own.
Only want to see the light that shines behind your eyes.
They're quite driven. A lot of that is coming from the preamp, so I have the gain turned quite high, so you get some analog distortion going in. Again, this has got some slight compression going in, and then mix-wise, again, SSLG, and like I was saying earlier, I've got a slight boost at about 2.2K. Quite a big low cut going on here just to take up the bass again, and then giving it a little bit of presence and stuff here, as you can see, just to make it stand out from the mix a little bit more. That's the verse vocals. Then I've got a couple of compressors on here. There's an LA76 and then an LA2A as well. Classic combo. Both of them are just doing a few decibels of gain reduction each.
I hope that I can say the things I wish I'd said.
Actually, this one's doing a lot more. It's doing about 10.
To sing my soul to sleep and take me back to bed.
And then I've got a couple of sends here going to a vocal reverb and vocal delay. Each of them are kind of dialed into taste, but the reverb is the Arturia plate reverb plugin, the Rev Plate 140. And then the delay bus has just a Logic stock plugin, which is a stereo delay on this. And I've just got the left and right channels slightly offset, so you get a bit of a different delay in each ear. And then really it just comes down to volume balancing and then mastering eventually. I'm not amazing at mastering. It's actually one of the things I'm trying to get a bit better at. I just basically try and make it sound a bit better, add a bit of saturation and stuff, and then bring the volume up to as much as I can get without it exploding. So here we have the SSL Comp, whatever this is called. I think it's called the Comp G. It's from Waves. Let me have a look. I know, it's just called SSL Comp. So I just have this on and it's just doing like 4 dB of gain reduction, just leveling everything out a little bit more on the master bus.
Who wants to be alone when we can feel alive instead?
Then a tube EQ, just doing a little bit of low attenuation and boosting in here, and a little bit of a high boost. Then I've got the J37 tape machine plugin, or whatever it's called, from Waves as well. I like to use this to add a little bit of saturation. You can probably not even hear the difference on YouTube, but I turn it on and off. Quite hard to hear, but it just adds a little bit of that special secret sauce. And then I've just got a couple of adaptive limiters. I've heard on the grapevine from various YouTubers that it's not really good to use one limiter to do all of your like leveling up of the gain. So I'm doing a couple here, and they're both sort of pushing it by about 3 or 4 decibels. So 3.7 and then 4.2. I've got my output ceiling set to -0.3. And then right at the bottom, I've got a loudness meter just to check how much that's actually working at the end of the mastering bus. And that's what it all sounds like. Every time I record something, it's a little bit different. Sometimes I'll have backing vocals and stuff like I said. Sometimes there'll be lots more guitar parts. I won't play it in this video because it'll probably get copyrighted, but if you'd like to hear it, the cover of Acquiesce will be on a card or something in a second. I hope that answers all the questions that the people asking for this video wanted to know, and if I've missed anything, let me know, I can make another one. But that is a quick glimpse at my process for recording my music. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching. Consider liking, subscribing, and I will see you very soon.